Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ron's Library and Ideas. Thank you for tuning in. I think getting into arguments on the internet is one of the most pointless and useless things that you can do. I'm fully aware that everybody has their own perspective, and we're all just down here trying to make that thing work based on your perspective. The other day, I made a comment on an ESPN post that was talking about Deion Sanders and his son. Recently, they played Colorado State University, and it was a double overtime win for Coach Prime and his son. It was a very close game, came down to the wire. And I went and looked in the comments section, and it was a lot of people upset and talking trash about the team, saying, well, they shouldn't have had that hard of a time playing against this team. And, I noticed a pattern in the comments, and I left a comment. And I said, let's see, I pulled this up. I said, pay attention to the people in here mad that they won. They don't like it when a black man isn't humble and winning. They really don't want to see successful black coaches or quarterbacks. There was a time when they said we weren't intelligent enough for either position. And little did I know that one comment was going to cause such a firestorm in the replies. It's 186 replies so far. And, the most common theme that is being brought up is that I'm race baiting. I'm putting race into an issue that has nothing to do with race. This one guy said, you're talking about something that happened in the past that you aren't even affected by today. And, that just goes to show you that most people really don't even understand racism, white supremacy, and how it works. Now, I admit it is a complicated subject. And when you've been immersed in something for so long, you don't even notice it. It just seems normal to you. When I was in high school, my first day of high school in Newport News, Virginia, I was in the aviation magnet. And most of our classes were to take place at the airport. But that first day, they weren't quite ready for us, so they were moving us from classroom to classroom in the actual high school. The first classroom that I went in, I walked in there and I was like, it kind of smells like cat litter in here. But I didn't think anything of it. So then I went on to the next class, and I noticed that it smelled like cat litter in there as well. Then we moved on to the next class, and in there it smelled like cat litter. So at this point, I'm thinking, what's going on with this school? Like, why does it smell like cat litter? Now, by this point, other students have started to notice it as well. And then I think it was when we got to like that fourth class period, there was this kid named Orsby. He walked up to this girl that was in our class, and he was like, oh, it's you that smells like cat litter. And I felt so bad for her because from that first day of school to the very last day of school, she smelled like cat litter. And because she was immersed in it, she probably didn't even smell it. She didn't know she was smelling. She just thought she was coming to school. And that's the way racism and white supremacy works in our country, and especially in the world. It's embedded in everything. Now, it's easy for, and I want to use this term black and Moorish interchangeably in this video because I'm learning more about my Moorish history, but I know a lot of people don't know about that. So you'll hear me say black and Moor, but same thing, essentially. But because, we're Moorish or black people and we've lived in this society for so long, we know what racism is, we know what white supremacy is, and we know what it feels like. We've lived through it, with it, our entire lives. The comment that said, you're talking about something that doesn't even affect you today. And that's not true. We like to think, or some of these people like to think that racism is something of the past. That's something we did back then that was bad, but it's not bad anymore. We've gotten over that. But people just don't realize just how close in our history that is. And I saw this post that said the reason they're trying to, ban what they call critical race theory in schools, and they don't want to teach it and put it in the history books, because they know those students can be able to look in there and see their grandparents and stuff. They didn't integrate schools in Savannah until my father was a freshman in high school. All before then, it was just he went to school with nothing but black kids. That's not that far away. That's my father's lifetime. So this idea of integration is a fairly new idea. And we have to step back and ask ourselves, are we better off now than what we were back then? Are we being educated better or worse? For those of you who aren't aware, who do have a hard time seeing it, I recommend the ISIS Papers by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She wrote this a long time ago. Let's see when it was first published. (1971). That's when she first started writing these different articles. Now, she placed these different articles together and she made it into a book. But even though it was written in like the 70s, these things still hold true today. And what we realize is that white supremacy really comes down to white genetic survival. They're aware of the stats. They know that they're dominated on the planet by melanated people. There are far more people who have melanin and darker shades of skin than there are people without it. They're surrounded in a sense. So the things that they're doing, they see it as a means of survival. They don't want to mix back in and have their descendants not look like them. Okay, I can understand that. But keeping a foot on our necks, trying to keep us down, that energy you put out comes back to you eventually. That's not how you make yourself survive. That's not how you strengthen yourself. That just hastens your demise. The thing that you fear that stays on your mind is going to happen even quicker because you're thinking about it so much. And that's something else that I was reading in the comments. Race is only a problem because we keep talking about it. They're of the mindset that if you ignore it, it will go away. But that's not true. Problems don't go away until you address them and find a solution. Somebody was so triggered, so hurt, I guess, by what I said that they sent me a message on Instagram. And it's interesting. This is a grown man writing to another grown man, expressing himself. And I just thought that was funny. I don't even know if I want to read it because why give it more attention? But he said, listen, man, I understand that racism is a problem and it needs to be addressed. But for me personally, wanting a college team that's flexing diamond watches, shades, and being arrogant about beating a smaller school is someone I like to see lose. It has nothing to do with race. It didn't even cross my mind that Deion is a black head coach and Shedeur is a black quarterback. I just saw it as a Hall of Fame corner and his son are leading the Buffaloes to turn their team around. And, I'm gonna call cap on that. Like, that was a black man out there. You noticed it. Everybody noticed it. It was a lot to say when he got to that school, when he left Jackson State. And, these sports, sports are like the Roman gladiator games. It keeps the people entertained and distracted while there are things happening in the background that's going to affect them later on. But as long as you're entertained, you're not thinking too much about it. Now, football is like our new gladiator sport here in America. I truly saw that. Fan is short for fanatic when I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings. And I saw how people act during football games or during football season. They're really all into it. They'll say things like, we have a game today. We're playing so-and-so. We? Where? You're not playing anybody. The team is playing somebody. But when you live vicariously through other people, your emotions get entwined in that. So they get so emotionally dependent on these teams and their successes or failures that when something changes or goes wrong, it's devastating to them. And that has to be like a double conundrum for them because they want to see their team do well, but they can look at these athletic programs and see, well, the majority of the players are black. So where does that leave the white people who are watching? What do they have to look at and be hopeful about? So there's certain positions that they want to keep just for themselves. Like that idea of the quarterback being a white man and that's like the hero of the game. That's the true thing. They didn't want black quarterbacks like that. Because we start letting you in as black quarterbacks. Well, what do we have for ourselves now? They don't want to see black coaches in the NFL. That's not something that they're excited about. Because again, they're thinking, well, where does that leave us?
Well, y'all hate to see a competent black person who ain't bowing down, who's winning. Why do y'all hate that so much?
Because it makes us insecure that we can't do it the same way he can.
Thank you.
It's interesting, man. That term race baiting, bringing up race where they say it has nothing to do with race. But if you know how things work, if you know how these systems are set in place, it does come down to race. Because racism and white supremacy is a tool. Dick Gregory said something that really stood out to me. He said, if I was in charge, I'd make all you black folks apologize to these white folks. Because the white folks you're mad at, they couldn't help you even if they did like you. They're not the ones making these decisions. Now, we can all see that, politics is a bunch of BS. It's a game. Left wing, right wing, same bird. It's like professional wrestling. It's entertainment. They put these people out in front of you to play the role of the scapegoat. So when things go wrong, you get upset with them. But they're not there to affect any type of true change. They're there to keep the system rolling and give you the illusion of choice. They don't care about your vote. I remember when Bush was running against Al Gore, and there was a big controversy down here in Florida with Bush's brother being the governor, and something janky was going on with the votes. Bush wound up winning that election, and he probably didn't win Florida. You see, presidents are selected, not elected. They don't care about what you vote for. They have an agenda they want to push, and they decide who they're going to put in there. Like, I fell for the Obama hype. I voted for Obama the first and second time. But then you saw, what changed after Obama was in office? And they'll give you excuses. They'll be like, well, the Democrats, we couldn't get this done because the Republicans were in charge of the Senate or the Congress, and they wouldn't let us pass this. And then when a Republican gets in power, they'll be like, well, we couldn't do this because the Democrats were blocking us from this. And it's just like a cycle that keeps circling around and around each other. And the people that suffer are you and I. The wealthy people, the rich, the elites, they don't care about that type of stuff. It's just meant to keep us distracted and to, like I said, give us the illusion of choice. They don't care what you pick. Bernie Sanders was trying to get the Democratic nomination to run against Donald Trump. And he said, the Democratic National Committee is cheating against me. And of course, they said, no, we're not. But it turns out they were, in fact, cheating against Bernie Sanders. The people wanted Bernie Sanders. The majority of people wanted Bernie Sanders to be that Democratic nomination. But the powers that be was like, nah, we want Hillary to have it. And we saw how that turned out. Hillary ran, lost against Donald Trump. I really believe they set that election up to where they stole it from Donald Trump to put Joe Biden in office, to push an agenda. It's all a game. And race plays into it. We got to keep a foot on the necks of these black folks because, honestly, I don't think they're worried about us rising back up and taking back control of the planet because we've did that for billions of years. We've been down here running the planet. I think what they're worried about the most is us waking up and realizing, we can move beyond this place. This is just one level of the game, physical reality. And I don't think you necessarily have to die to get to that next plane of existence. I think it has to do with the way you're vibrating and what controls your vibration, your emotions, the things that you're thinking about, what you're worried about, what you're eating. All these are things that can be controlled by outside sources. The only thing you can control is how you react to these things. So I don't get worried or upset when I see certain stuff. I just observe it and take it for what it is. It's all part of the game. I wrote a book called Free Your Mind to Have Peace of Mind. I'm going to link that below so you can check that out. But if you can control your mind, if you can control the energy that you're putting out, you can control your reality. And that's something we have to be very cognizant of every day. What am I thinking about? What's worrying me? What's staying on my mind constantly? Because things that stay on your mind constantly is what you're going to get. And going back to that comment that I made, calling me a race baiter, I'd be a fool not to be able to point these things out or see them. But when you see something, you should say something. Point it out, put it in their face, and let them deal with it. And you don't even have to argue with them. It's a lot of comments on there, attacking me, saying different things. And I just ignore it. Because at the end of the day, their thoughts and opinions don't matter. I'm not here to convince anybody. Convince yourself. I want to read something out of here. And remember, Dr. Welsing wrote this back in 1974. But she said, there's something to keep in mind that goes back to why we have such a gender divide right now. You keep the men pitted against the woman and see how chaos unfolds. But she said, stabilized union between the black male and the black female means the eventual end to white supremacy. When the black male and the black female simply define their joint struggle in terms of achieving education, housing, jobs, and money, rather than as specifically countering the global and local dynamic for white genetic survival, i.e. white supremacy, we are attempting to function with the wrong game manual and with all of the wrong rules. While we have remained confused, the global and local white collectives consciously and or unconsciously have mastered white genetic survival strategies in all areas of life activity. Thus, we as blacks are being checkmated continuously by the local and global white collectives. We are the victims of white supremacy who spend most of our time squabbling, struggling, and fighting with one another. Thus, matters go from bad to worse, especially in such critical areas as the black male, black female relationship, the very foundation of the black nation. One of the things that you're going to notice that they do, you'll see like a racist situation happening, and they'll say, nah, race has nothing to do with it. I'm not mad at Deion Sanders and his son because they're black. I'm mad at them because insert whatever. And maybe, they can probably really think that's true in their minds. But if they delved a little deeper and wanted to be honest, and they probably don't, they do have a problem with it because it's a black man doing it. It's a black man being extremely confident and saying he's good at this. They love Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor used to knock people out and do like this funny walk-off. Like, I thought it was entertaining. It was funny. I enjoyed watching Conor McGregor fights. He was an entertainer. And, you had some people who spoke out against it, but he was loved by a lot of people. They want to see that braggadocious male. They want to see you be confident. But when it comes to us, it's like, nah, be humble. Sit down. Be aware of your abilities and let it be known. That's all you have to do. And some things aren't even worth the argument. This divide of keeping black men and black women against each other, or men and women out of harmony altogether, that's part of the power structure's role. Keep us fighting amongst ourselves, and we won't notice what they're doing in the background. Here's something to think about. Those rich, elite, quote unquote, white folks who have all the money, they don't care about the poor whites either. They've given them this idea, well, I may not be black or I may not be rich, but at least I ain't no nigger. That's the mentality that some of them have. I'm not wealthy, but at least I'm not them. And that's getting to be harder to have as a mindset because, you can see our excellence. I remember having that moment of being upset when I realized, my history teachers have been lying to me for a long time. This stuff isn't true. And I can imagine, there are white folks having that same type of anger now that the truth about history is starting to come out more and more. They were lied to too. They were told they were the greatest thing since sliced bread. They said, hell, even Jesus is white. Of course God is white. But then you start seeing the evidence. You start thinking about it. It's like, well, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. Where does this put me? It's a self-esteem issue. Watching somebody else shine shouldn't take away from your self-esteem. And if it does, that's something you have to work on yourself. It's called self-confidence. Only thing that should affect your self-confidence is yourself. When you let other ideas and opinions get into your head, that's when problems start. That's when you get triggered by me saying, look at all the people who are complaining about what Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders are doing. And it's crazy. You look at the comments, you'll notice a pattern. And what interesting enough, I saw quite a few Hispanic people responding to me as well, saying, oh, man, you're race baiting. One person said, I'm Hispanic, bro, and even I don't like so-and-so and so-and-so. And that just goes to show, that white supremacist mindset, it affects everybody. It's crazy. The darker your skin is, the more it is like, stay back. And what's really fascinating that when something is done to somebody for so long, they'll start to do it to themselves. Think about Coming to America. In that movie, you had Prince Hakeem leaving Zamunda to come to America to find his Lisa, his purpose, his wife. But look at how they depicted those two sisters. Lisa was the light-skinned good sister. She had the boyfriend who was successful. His family had their own company. She was helping to run the family business, working on the books. And then you had the younger, darker-skinned sister who was portrayed in that movie as being the freak. That's the one you want to have fun with. She was all over Akeem, touching his thigh at the game, making him jump up out of his seat. And then when she found out that when Simi told her that he was the prince and Akeem was the manservant, well, then she jumped over to Simi, showing her as being like I'm more worried about money than your actual character. Because remember, Lisa was shown as, well, I don't care that you're a goat herder. I like you. But the younger sister was about that paper. Even at the end of the movie, when it was clear that she couldn't have Akeem and he was the prince, she went for Daryl, the next best thing. And they didn't even put her in the second movie. And that's interesting. That was us doing that to ourselves. That's fascinating how, you can change the mindset of a people by doing something to them so consistently for so long. They'll start to do it to themselves. Like even my father, when he was, like I said, he didn't start going to school with white people until he was in high school. When he was in elementary school, the teachers would sit all the light-skinned students up front and all the dark-skinned students were in the back of the class. Now, were they aware that they were doing this? Maybe, maybe not. Now, my father is a dark-skinned guy, but his mother was a teacher, so they didn't put him in the back, but they didn't put him in the front, so they sat him right there in the middle. There's a book called The Color Complex that I read a long time ago. That's worth reading. I actually need to reread that myself. But they talk about that color complex that we have within our community. So they say that, we're bringing race into things where race doesn't have a place, but race is important because it's something that's been ingrained in our mindsets. That's things I've had to check about myself. Wonder, okay, why do I think this? They used to do something called the brown paper bag test. That if you were darker than this brown paper bag, you couldn't come in. They did this for churches. They did this for fraternities, sororities. And that's us doing this to ourselves because we've been affected with a mindset. Race baiting. It's not a bait. It's there. This is our society. This is how things operate. But at the end of the day, we're on the right track. Things are changing for the better. Because ultimately, you've already won. You're not a human. You are a soul. And after you leave here, you just go on to something better. Keep that in mind. Because the more you stress about these things that go on in the physical, the more you're going to get more of those things that you're stressing about. So be able to point out the racism when you see it, but don't argue about it. Say your piece and keep it moving. Because at the end of the day, it's not your responsibility to convince anyone but yourself. So again, this is the ISIS Papers, The Key to the Colors by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. You should definitely give that a read. The Color Complex, I forgot who wrote that. That's something else to, pay attention to. Give that a read. And I'll see you guys next time on the next episode of Ron's Library and Ideas. Also, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. It helps the algorithm recognize me and pushes it out to a broader audience. And if you enjoyed the things that I've talked about, share it with your family. Share it with your friends. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.